الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the blessings of life. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the favors bestowed upon us. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his household, his companions, and those who follow their path until the day of judgment. Brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ittaqullaha haqqa tuqatih wa la tamutunna illa wa antum muslimun. O you who have believed, fear Allah as He should be feared, and do not die except as Muslims. The khutbah for today is about a hadith that was reported by Al-Harith from Ali ibn Abi Talib. We are going to look at the hadith and look at some of the lessons we can derive from the hadith. It was narrated that Al-Harith Alao was passing by a masjid, a mosque. So he saw some people in the masjid discussing about issues that are of no benefit to them in this world and the hereafter. He saw them discussing about talking vain talks, talking about stories that is of no benefit to them in this world and the hereafter. So he quickly rushed to Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, and said, Oh, the leader of the believers, I saw the Muslims preoccupying themselves in the masjid with matters that will not benefit them in this world and the hereafter. And when he said this to Ali ibn Abi Talib, he replied to Al-Harith and said, I have heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying that a time will come, a time of trials, fitna and tests. A time will come that will be filled with trials, that will be filled with fitna and a lot of tribulations. Al-Harith looked at the companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and asked him, Mal makhraj, what is the way forward? What is the way out? How can we resolve some of this fitna? How can we be saved from some of these trials? And Ali ibn Abi Talib said, I heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, the book of Allah contains news of what came before you and information about what will come after you. What Ali ibn Abi Talib is saying to the companion is that the way forward, the solution to the trials that will be faced in the future, just like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prophesied, is the book of Allah. The solution to these tests, the solution to these trials, the solution to the tribulations that will be faced is what? Is the book of Allah. He said it contains the news of what came before you. It means it contains the news of those who had come before us, from the stories of the prophets and messengers of Allah. It contains the stories of the righteous people who had come before us, so that we can read and learn lessons from their stories. We can derive lessons that will be of benefit to us in this world and the hereafter. And it also contains information about what will come after you, which are the trials, just like the scholars have mentioned, the signs of the Day of Judgment. The trials that the Prophet ﷺ said, a man will wake up in the morning as Muslim, and before evening he is a disbeliever. The trials that will come and take people, just like the waves of the sea will take people. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned in many authentic ahadith that trials will come from the signs of the Day of Judgment. And what are the solutions to these trials? What are the solutions to these tribulations? Such as some of the trials we'll face now in the world, in our world now. What are their solutions? The Prophet ﷺ told us, it is the book of Allah, the Quran. That is where we get the resolution of all of these problems. That is where we get the solutions of all of these trials. We fail to understand this, and we think the solution can be found in some of the things we think we can find the solutions in. And we have tried quite a number of them. There is no solution yet. And the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned it to us. The Prophet ﷺ continued to talk about the solution to the fitna that will befall people on the day, prior to the Day of Judgment at the end time. And the solution to the fitna. The Prophet ﷺ continued to tell us about the solution, which is the Quran. He said, unwillings that is in the Quran is rulings. There are rulings in the Quran of matters among you. That is, in the Quran, there are rulings in it that will solve all your problems, whether political problems, whether societal problems, whether family problems. All of these are in the Quran. And the Prophet ﷺ said, it is a decisive word, and not to be taken lightly. In it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned His enjoyments, His commandments, His words, and we should take it seriously as Allah has mentioned it in the Quran. And the Prophet ﷺ says, whoever abandons it out of arrogance, Allah will break them. Whoever abandons the Quran out of arrogance. The scholars have mentioned that there are two ways in which we can abandon the Quran. The first one is abandoning the Quran, not believing in it and not believing in its injunctions. These, the scholar says, whoever does this is out of Islam. But whoever abandons the Quran, believing in what it entails and that it is the words of Allah, and Allah had commanded that we should read the Quran and act upon it, but out of laxity, out of laziness, he abandoned the Quran out of his heart desire that this person is still a Muslim, but he is a sinner. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever seeks guidance from other than it, then Allah will lead them astray. Whoever seeks guidance other than what is in the Quran, whoever seeks guidance other than what is mentioned in the Quran, for example, those who goes to seek for judgments from what is not from the Quran, at-tawagit, as it is mentioned by the scholars, then Allah will lead them astray. You think the solution of this life today is what we think we have? Then surely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will lead those who ever seek guidance from other than the Quran. Allah will lead them astray. May Allah protect us. The Prophet ﷺ continued, it is Allah's strong hope, the wise reminder, that is, whoever recites it will be reminded by Allah's injunctions, and the reminder will be of benefit to him, and it is the straight path of Allah, to Allah. With it, desires do not deviate, tongues do not confuse, scholars do not get tired of it. That is, they don't get tired of reciting it, of conveying the message to the people, explaining the truth to them, making them understand what Allah had decreed for his servants in it. The Prophet ﷺ says about the Quran, and its wonders never cease, its miracles never cease. It means the miracle that are in the Quran never cease. When you recite it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will continue to show the mu'jizat of the Quran until the day of judgment. Whoever knows this, knows it. And whoever had not tested it, then surely he should know that wallahi, the miracles of the Quran will continue. Whether reciting it, whether acting upon its injunctions, all of these, the miracles of the Quran will manifest upon whoever holds upon it, whoever hold onto it. The jinns themselves did not finish praising it until they said, indeed, we have had an amazing Quran guiding to the right path. So we have believed in it. And the Prophet ﷺ mentioned a very important issue we all need to listen. He said, whoever speaks about it speaks the truth. Whoever used the Quran as his evidence and facts, then that person is saying nothing but the truth. Whoever acts upon it will be rewarded. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give him the reward of acting upon it. And he said, whoever judges by it will be just. And this is very key. Whoever judged by the Quran will be just. And he said finally, whoever calls to it is guided to the straight path. And the Prophet ﷺ concluded his saying with these statements, telling us the solution to the fitna we are now, explaining to us that when we hold on to the Quran, surely all our problems are solved. When we hold on to the Quran, Allah will surely guide us. But when we refuse to hold on to the Quran, then we are astray. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us and protect us. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.